Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing podcast. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how are you doing today?
All good in the hood, Joe. We are, what's today? December 16th. So we are halfway through the December party scene. I am actually more than, thank the Lord, more than halfway through. I'm 4 parties in with 2 to go, and I'm in the home stretch, so to speak.
Wow.
And looking forward to just bust through the final 2 parties. One that I happen to be hosting myself, and starting to wear me down, right? Ooh. So thankfully, the Christmas day itself is a little bit of can be slower, a little catch up on the rest. So I'm looking forward to that. How about you? Where are you at?
I'm still in Enumclaw waiting for the snow. We did get a powder day on Friday. Yeah.
You did?
Oh yeah. It was limited lifts open, but it was beautiful snow.
This is Crystal, right?
Yeah, Crystal Mountain.
Oh man. Well, there's a lot of talk in my household this week, a lot of negotiating happening because Stevens is supposed to open on Wednesday.
Ooh.
And this is the last week of school prior to the break. But I am being lobbied very hard to skip school on Wednesday or Thursday and head up to Stevens for our first day. So
yeah, can I get into that lobbying? I'll lobby for them too.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Joe. You can gang up on me. I hear it. I'm almost there. So just a matter if I can get the stuff off my plate in order for us to go. But I'm feeling it. I'm excited.
Go for it. I've heard there's a big storm coming in on Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah. Well, I got to check all my tires and all that stuff. Be ready to roll up there. But really looking forward to a big snow dump and enjoying the rest of the next several months out there on the mountain. And hopefully we'll do that with you guys too. But today, I know we're all sidetracked with all our snowboarding dreams and our Christmas thoughts, but today we are going to give you a big gift, a big holiday gift, one of many that we will be dropping on you this holiday season. And today we have with us Preston Walls, who is the founder and CEO of Walls Property Group, will be with us on the podcast today. Preston is a long-term generational multifamily investor in the core of Seattle areas, which we'll learn. Also offers, I believe, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but third-party property management to other apartment building owners or mixed-use properties and so forth. But we're going to let Preston fill us in on all the details today himself. So welcome, Preston.
Thank you, Julie and Joe.
All right. Yeah. I have been walking by some of the buildings that Preston owns for years and years and years, because some of them are over here in Ballard where I live, right? So it's kind of a nice treat to have a local, and plus there's so many different syndicators and apartment groups out there that us as investors get bombarded with. It's actually fantastically awesome to talk to a homegrown local guy that is crushing it here right in our own backyard. So we couldn't be more excited to have Preston on the podcast today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my office is in Ballard, and I like to keep things as close to home as possible.
It's all good. It's all good stuff. We probably know so many of the same people. We won't bore everybody with our side discussion today, but, look forward to getting to know you better here. And why don't you kick us off, Joe, and we'll just jump right into it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show today, Preston, and we're excited to have you. First question, always to jump back in the real estate time machine and learn about where you grew up, how you grew up, and how that led you into real estate. For you, that might be from the very beginning, but we'd love to hear it all.
Yeah, I might go back a couple generations to start, but my grandfather, he moved to Seattle to be a professor at Seattle Pacific University, and so he acquired some properties near campus on Queen Anne and rented those out. My dad then worked on those properties, managed them, and then I ended up painting some of those houses during my summers. I had a painting business during
Was that college pro painters?
No, I had my own shop. I just I couldn't stand giving away a percentage of revenue to franchise fee. So I put it all together myself. But my grandfather painted properties during his summers off, and my dad did it. So we kind of had this multi-generational painting.
Boy, we have another investor buddy that started off as a college pro painter, little franchise guy, and he is crushing it. Just shout out to our buddy Jared Holland at this point. Now you got me thinking maybe I should teach my girls how to paint. Maybe it's the gateway to being a kick-ass investor. Who knows, right?
It's a great way to know your way around a building, to know your way around the cost of a discrete project. So here's the scope of work, here's what it costs to do it. And that plays out so many times over in remodeling projects and construction projects as you get an increasing number of vendors and contractors on site.
Yeah. So are you saying then that did I hear it correctly, that your grandfather was the guy that kicked all this off? And was that because he was a professor over at Seattle Pacific, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, he decided, hey, I'm working over here. Let me buy some student housing. Let me get into the multifamily game. It seems the right thing to do to buy some of these properties that house all these students. Was that his impetus there?
Yeah, exactly. It was a way to supplement his income and
did he actually live in one of the units himself then?
He did not. They had a house. My dad lived in one of the units for a few years. And I mean that started me off on my first building I bought was a triplex on Queen Anne, and I renovated it, turned it into a fourplex, and lived in one of the units for a number of years. So this model of house hacking has been in our family for a long time.
Awesome. So what year was that, or how long ago was that you bought that very first triplex?
I bought that triplex in 2003. I paid $505,000 for it, which at the time was an astronomical, outrageous overpayment of funds for triplex. But it's it's worked out really well. I still own the building, and glad I do.
Tell us on that. So did you go into it knowing that you were going to convert it then to a fourplex? And was that what your family had done? Was that the MO of your family? We're going to talk about that today, increasing density. Is that what that means to you? Or is that, what is one of the things we're talking about with Preston before we jumped on is that, he has a value add niche in increasing density within the existing footprint of a building. Is that something that your family has always done, or something that you've grown to take on as one of your focal points on your purchases?
It's something that I evolved into. My father's his view of value add was more of just let's freshen up what's there. Let's replace flooring, cabinets, countertops, lighting, and finishes. And after college, I spent a few years in Manhattan, and it's an expensive market to live in. And I ended up sharing a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with 2 other guys. So that meant we needed to figure out space for all of us to live. And so
that sounds like an interesting setup.
I created my bedroom by putting a wall up in the middle of the living room, because the living room was decent size, but I constructed a temporary wall in the living room and turned it into a 3-bedroom on our own. And
then the idea was born. Boom.
Yeah.
Right
So
there, right?
that action made it affordable for all 3 of us to
avoid having to bunk out together.
Yeah. We were able to live on Columbus Circle, a block from Central Park, and not in Hoboken or Brooklyn, where what we were making as early 20s, right out of college.
What did you graduate in college? Is that something that has been applied to your real estate business, or?
Yeah, I would say very much so. My degree was in economics and English, and I worked for a couple different investment banks in New York, and so I got my Series 7 and learned about investments through the securities side of the world.
Nice. I almost went that direction myself. I almost went the Series 7 licensing stuff myself, but it ended up not going that way. But so are all your guys' properties then in Washington, or do you have any out-of-state properties? And what's the average size of the buildings that you guys own?
Well, not only are they all in Washington, they are all in Seattle.
Very nice.
So I like to keep things really, really close as possible, to keep an eye on them, look at them. I self-manage them. So for all the staff, leasing agents, maintenance, asset manager to get out and take a look at them.
That leaves us all in complete awe, because to be able to buy Seattle apartment projects these days is, for all accounts of most people can't figure out how that pencils. Have you bought any in the last, we'll say 5 years, or were they all purchased just like the triplex long ago, where, it was seemed crazy at the time? I guess if it seemed crazy at the time and you did it back in 2003, what would be the difference today then on the craziness of the prices of, price per unit you'd have to pay today? Would you do that again today? Are you able to buy buildings today and compete in today's market on those purchases? Or fill me in on that. That's the secret sauce right there.
I would say there's no shortage of compelling deals out there. I'm under contract on a deal that will close shortly. The last deal I bought before that was early fall. How do you find deals? Is it through relationships with brokers that bring you because they know you're experienced, or are you finding these on your own through maybe buying some of the buildings that you manage for others, or how do you go about getting your deal flow? I would say probably half are listed properties that just come through commercial MLS. And I'm a broker, so I just write it up as a good property comes through. And then the other half come through brokers that I have a relationship with from doing deals with in the past, and they have off-market properties or sellers that they've contacted that might be interested in selling, and so write up a number of offers that way. And
so half are listed and half are off-market through brokers,
right? Yeah. And
are you because this is the golden ticket here? I'm sure it helps you to have a license there as well. But are there multiple offers on the buildings that you're offering on? Listed.
Many times, yes, especially on listed properties. And the things that help me be competitive in multiple offer situations, one, not coming in with a financing contingency. So even though I use debt to finance the acquisition, the relationships with the lenders are strong enough and long lasting that I can be really confident they'll perform. And I usually have a backup plan just in case bank doesn't deliver on what they said they'd do.
Well, right there probably puts you in first position, right? Just with that right there. Or I imagine there's other people that can maybe do the same. But
I would say it's fairly standard to write an all cash offer for multifamily properties.
What size buildings are we talking about?
My sweet spot is probably, say, 5 to 30 unit buildings in Seattle.
And so on a 20 unit building, you're still not using any type of financing contingency or anything on that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Correct. Which is, like you said, maybe more commonplace. What else do you think puts you ahead? That you have maybe some cost effective savings because you have your whole management team and.
Well, one is just track record and surety of close. The brokers who I've worked with before, they have a lot of confidence that I'm gonna follow through and close on the
credibility. We'll say you have credibility with the brokers.
Yeah, that's a big one, and a big one in them being able to sell it confidently to their client.
Do you think that is your biggest advantage? If you were to say the top two advantages, is that your biggest advantage right there, your credibility?
Yeah, just having done it for a while and having a number of successful closings behind me. That gives a lot of strength to the offers.
Awesome. And then in addition to buying your own properties, do you offer third-party management? Is that correct to others?
Yeah, do third-party property management and then do syndications as well. So for multifamily rehabs, if I don't have all the equity together to do it, I'll get an investor group together.
Is that investor group also the same group of who you might manage for, like some of the landlords that you manage for as part of your syndication group? Or is that something that maybe after listening to how spectacular your systems and your credibility and your experiences, that other people that we're talking, listening today out there in podcast land might be able to engage with you after this as far as their interest in syndications? I can tell you I'm one of those people. So, is that something that we can sign up and get on a list or something with you? Or meet
yes, absolutely. I'd be, we're always looking for potential investors that might want to put some equity into a future deal. But typically the investor group that we're targeting is different or separate from the third-party management clients that have their own buildings we're managing.
Excellent. Well, at the end of the podcast, guys, we'll let you all know how you might be able to get to know Preston better and engage with him offline here. So these days, what's the smallest size building that you would buy, and what is the smallest size building that you would manage for others?
Smallest building I would buy is probably 5 units, and that could be an after renovated. I'd probably consider a 4 unit that I could turn into a 5 unit, but for financing reasons, financing 4 units and smaller is really challenging, problematic for me. So I tend to stick with 5 units and larger for ease of financing.
Versus residential loan, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Good stuff. So when you are, and do you actually own and manage mixed use properties as well?
Yes, I have a number of mixed use properties. Their primary component is multifamily, but often you'll get retail on the ground floor.
And who manages the commercial leasing and the TIs related to the commercial aspect of those buildings?
So the square footage of the individual spaces in those retail spaces is relatively small. We manage the brokerage, the leasing in-house on those, and we'll negotiate the TI allowance directly with the tenants.
Awesome. Good stuff. I assume that you, or maybe I could be wrong, do you broker, like if any of your third party, we talked a little bit earlier that my history of where I kind of grew up in the real estate game was also in the multifamily value add game. Do you, which also had a component of brokerage and construction related to it, do you guys broker the buildings of your third party,
No, we've not done any sales. Sales selling multifamily properties. It's its own beast, and I've not gotten into that. I use the brokerage license primarily for being able to represent myself on purchases, to have a third party property management business, and for lend some credibility to retail leasing as well.
Right. How about, do you ever sell your buildings, or do you hang on to them all long term?
Rarely sell them. I've sold a few over the years, and mainly they've been to, well, I guess
straight up.
Two were to get out of partnerships, and one was to buy a house.
Excellent there. Okay, well, let's talk about, kind of one of your MOs. Let's talk about what you look at when you go to buy a building. I assume also that you do this for your, fee-based management clients. Do you help your fee-based management clients also do value add density increases? Do they come to you for that reason, or are you managing buildings that are already renovated, or do you manage buildings that maybe they don't have the funds, or for whatever reason they choose not, and they kind of live old school, old style buildings?
Yeah, all of the above. They're all over the map. So we have an in-house construction management team, and so we can, we're very familiar with these renovations of existing buildings, renovations of existing units, adding units within the existing envelope of a multifamily building. So once you see the property and have a relationship with the owner, you can give them a proposal on, hey, here's what it'll cost to put a new unit in this storage room in your building.
Yeah, let's go a little deep dive on that part. So give us examples of some of the density increases to densities on properties that you've done. How does that happen? Where do you do it? Because you're, probably, like we said, you're all in Seattle. So it's not like you're probably buying necessarily properties that have room to expand out and side to side or addition. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, zoning wise, it's a lot more challenging and more hoops to jump through to expand the footprint of the building to make it taller or wider. But within your building, there's a lot more leeway and a lot more that you can do. So one of the things that I look for in new properties is as large of difference between the gross square footage and net rentable square footage. And that tells me that there's either a storage room or laundry room or some type of common space that is adding to the gross square footage, but is not captured in net rentable. And
just so you know, guys that are listening, what he's talking about right here, have your ears open very loud. This is a major, major nugget, what he's sharing with you, which is a simple way for a quick analysis if there is some potential, just like a benchmark check, right? Preston, would you say that? Just a quick look.
This is part of my 30-second due diligence.
Right. Exactly.
So
is this the first thing that you look at when somebody sends you a deal or you see one listed? Is that the very first thing you look at?
The first thing I look at is the address. Where is it? And is it within my geographic scope?
What's the second thing you look at?
If yes, then I look at the zoning. So it can be within the geographic zone, but if it's in single family zoning, 90% of the time going to disqualify it based on that. And if it passes those two, then I'll look at it a little more closely. I'll look at
little sidebar discussion down a little rabbit hole here. Do you think that the city of Seattle will move towards getting rid of residential zoning? Like, I think they did that in Portland, right? Where, in some ways, risk, but you could be ahead of the game in residential zones that are, bordering or, the higher zoning. Does that, you get what I'm going for here?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to speculate with you on it, but I would never make an investment with that idea or with that possibility.
Valid.
So
let's speculate for a second.
I think there's way too much political risk, or not in my backyard. There's too much neighborhood opposition to changes, significant changes like that to single family zones. You've seen some changes at the margin to allow detached accessory dwelling units,
yes.
So backyard cottages, and that's a step in the right direction of promoting density in residential neighborhoods. I think it would be really, really hard, or would take a really long time before Seattle moves to more flexible single family zoning.
Okay, there you go. You guys have it. Experience right there. So we got your checklist. We're looking at address, then we're looking at zoning, and we're ruling out. Why we're going over this too is, hey, Preston, there's people listening today that might want to bring you some deals. So we're just going over your buyer box right now.
You bet. I would love to take a look.
Yeah. So what's after zoning? What's your next check? Are we getting down to?
I go on the Department of Construction Land Use site, and I look at their GIS map, which shows zoning and frequent transit areas, urban villages. So if it's in an urban village, it moves a lot higher in my priority list, because there's a lot more that you can do with a property in an urban village designation. And if it's not, I'll settle for a frequent transit area. And the thing that both of those give you is more flexibility around parking. So some things I like to do around adding density are either converting garage spaces, if they're above grade or at grade, or carports into a new unit or units.
Got it. Makes sense. And that is allowed and doable if the right zoning is there, right? That's the whole key.
Yeah. And this is where you need to have a good architect contact, someone that you can bounce ideas off of. And I send some architect a lot of addresses for his just short feasibility analysis, and he'll go with me on inspection walkthroughs or open houses that brokers are doing in properties. But
do you keep this, because you're offering, I'm sure, when you're offering on these deals, you have no financing contingencies? Are you have no inspection, or do you have to always have an inspection, because a lot of times people aren't even allowed into the units without a signed contract?
I typically go with no inspection contingency, right, because a good broker is giving you the opportunity to see enough of the building or walk through the building prior to writing it up. So you can get through that part, and then your feasibility is limited to just books and records and title and all of that. And on the physical inspection, I care a lot less about what's there, because in many situations, especially kind of vintage buildings that I'm going to rehab, I'm taking most everything out of it. So
does that include plumbing and electrical?
I'm typically
wiring and replumbing?
Typically doing new plumbing, electrical, HVAC, all of that. So
I mean a full new, all plumbing, right? Not partial. Is that what we're talking about?
If it's copper plumbing, I can leave pieces of that in place. But any galvanized plumbing system, every inch of that, including waistlines, comes out.
Right.
And original electrical, if it's more than, say, 40 or 50 years old,
right,
I'll take that out as well.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going down your buyer box, address, zoning. We're looking at the GIS map. Or do you have your architect on retainer, or how does that work?
I just pay him hourly for his time on each of the projects.
Excellent. What else beyond this? What's the next thing we're going to be looking for Preston? Because we're going to send him some deals, everybody.
So from there, I put together a quick model. So what do I think the budget's going to be to fix this up, and what are the rents going to be once it's improved? And that gives me an after renovation value, what the property's worth, what it'll appraise for, what a bank will lend on it. And my exit strategy after all of this, rather than sell it, I'm looking to put permanent financing on.
Yep.
And take cash out that way.
A deep dive on this topic now. So we talked about a quick and dirty glance over on the gross square foot versus rentable as like a little benchmark look, aside from these other things. Do you also know, like, I need to be able to increase these rents by $300 a unit? Or, do you do that quick overview? Like, okay, the rents are at, $1.50 a square foot right now. I know I need to get them to be able to get them to $3, or do you know, like, I need to increase rents by $300 a unit in order for this to even have a chance?
I look at it more on a building wide, from a building wide perspective. So here's the value, here's the purchase price of the building, here's the acquisition, or here's the cost to go into renovation. So here's my total cost. What's my return on that cost? So what's the incremental value added? That's one metric. I don't get caught up in individual rents, because there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
So return on cost, that metric is a big one.
Yeah, return on cost. I don't like using internal rate of return, because it assumes a sale at some point, and I don't like to make that assumption, but I will calculate an IRR over 10 years just to compare it to other investments and other investment opportunities that other people are doing.
What's the return on cost that you're looking for? This is the same way, like, big institutional investors analyze their deals, right? I've been in that game, right? That's how that a big metric to them as well. What's the return on cost that you're looking for?
So I look at that two ways. So return on cost and return on equity. The return on equity is a little bit easier. I look to double the equity value in the property, and so the cost will be in the 20 to 25% range, and internal rates of return now are about 14 for the over a 10-year time horizon for the properties that I'm looking at.
Awesome. Good. I'm geeking out here. So this is all good stuff, you guys. This is really, really good stuff for you guys today. If you're looking at either being a passive investor, you can tell by talking to Preston here that he knows what he's doing. Part of what I've spent the last, I'll say specifically 5 years, is vetting, I would say syndicators that I might want to invest with, or partners like that, right? Because it seems like everybody comes out of the woodwork and thinks that they're a syndicator, and there's just as many problems, vetting those people as there are like in anything else. So personally today, this is exciting for me to talk to you, but let's go deep dive into now, let's go back to, we went down a rabbit hole there, which I love, but let's go back to the density thing. We started talking about, where you can add, through carports or garages and stuff like that. I know that when I was, in this game, focused 100% of my time on that back in the day, we would take laundry rooms, like you said, and maybe we had a 1-bedroom that had a laundry room next to it that we could now turn this into a 2-bedroom unit, and then just put like a stack washer dryer inside the unit, as part of the renovation plan. Do you do that kind of stuff?
Yes, absolutely. Doing one building right now that has laundry rooms on every floor, and as part of the renovation, we're putting laundry stacks in each of the units. So we've now created this space that's no longer needed as a building amenity, and just repurposing that space as a bathroom for the adjacent unit. But another thing
does that look like a stack going in a closet then? Is that what that looks like?
Yes. Ideally, we try to do it off of one of the existing bathrooms, so that it can share the overhead vent in that bathroom. But otherwise, it's a hall closet, a coat closet, or closet where the water heater is. Those are all options for a stacked washer and dryer to go in.
Hey guys, it's Julie here with a quick break from the show to discuss an opportunity some of you may have interest in, which is to work more closely with me. On almost a daily basis, I get calls from investors and brokers, both new and experienced, asking me for guidance or advice. I love helping you guys out, and it keeps me on my toes too. So with that said, I wanted to let you know that I have a private broker coaching community called the VIP Education Community. And the best part is that it's 100% free. That's right, it's free to join. So whether you're a traditional broker or a broker investor, my VIP education community offers personalized one-on-one coaching from not just me, but also from my experienced broker friends with expertise in all disciplines of real estate and real estate investing. We'll teach and share our modern marketing strategies, our tech and lead generation resources, plus teach you how to identify or offer up opportunities for yourself or for your clients using techniques such as seller financing, lease options, land entitlement deals, burr investing, flipping, multifamily or commercial coaching, whatever you like. we've got it all covered for you. The future of real estate is changing fast, and to stay in the game, it's time to learn about all the options you can offer your buyer and seller clients, as well as, if you want, learn how to use those skills to grow your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like more details about joining my VIP education community, reach out to me at julie@seattleinvestorsclub.com or text me at 206-910-2985 or just send me a Facebook message. My new favorite phrase is community equals confidence. So let's navigate the future of real estate together. Now, back to the show.
I mean, there's sort of, maybe I'm wrong, but you let me know. There's sort of probably a handful of ways other than, just buildings that have tons of wasted space, tactics to do the density thing, right? Grabbing laundry rooms or unused space, garages or carports. Is there storage unit areas, converting those somehow? Is there other, what else? What other kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Club rooms or common rooms in buildings.
Yeah.
Roof decks or like roof access. There's a number of buildings that have stair towers that go up to the roof that are just locked. And so putting a common area amenity up
they're
there.
Locked because it's a maintenance use to get to the roof, right?
Exactly.
So what do you do with those?
Get a permit to put a roof deck on and install roof deck, put a gas grill, tables and chairs up there.
I gotcha. Okay.
So
it's not living space, but
it's not living space, but it becomes a common area amenity for the building.
How about parking? Like parking, I know in commercial real estate and so forth is very important as far as, impacting leasing and things like that. But that's what we're backing it up a little bit here to talk about the urban village, and the parking requirements are less stringent or go away. Do you feel there's any risk in taking away all the parking of a building in these core areas that you're buying in? Or is that part of your, do you always want to have parking, or does it matter to you if there's parking or not?
Well, I look at it this way in terms of risk. Yeah. If you take away parking or you limit the parking options in your building, you're reducing your potential renter pool. And in a tough market, that could make your building more challenging to rent. But, what's the value of the space? And that space is far, far and away more valuable as a housing unit than a car housing unit. So I look at it from highest and best use of what's there, and turning it into apartments.
What does the permitting look like in doing something like that? What's the timelines? Are there tricks to the trade? You have to be working with the right architect who has relationships, or what is the timeline on something? Not as far as construction, I'm sure you can bang it out, but permitting.
So working with a good architect is key. Anytime you're adding a unit, it's a reviewed permit at the city. The timeline to get an appointment for the city to look at your plans is now about 5 to 6 months. And then it takes them another 4 or 5 months to review your plans once they've had a chance to look at it.
So we're talking a year?
That's about right. Just to get the permit to build it.
So when you're going to buy these buildings and you know that you're going to be adding value to your NOI and therefore your market value of your building, which increases, the appraised value, which backs into the fact that you can get a better loan and get more of your cash out when you go to hold it long term, right? Do you ever buy, does that addition of that extra unit space allow you to pay more for the building? Or is that since you don't know that it's going to be fully approved until it actually happens a year down the road, do you not build that into your underwriting when you go to purchase? Is that just a value add on top that you get full benefit of? Or do you use that to compete on how much you'll pay for the building, including that underwriting in when you're going to make your offers? Because you won't know until 12 months whether you can do it or not, unless you're just so experienced that you're like, oh no, I know we'll be able to do it. We just have to, it's basically administrative just to wait to do it. Which one is it?
I've never not gotten a permit for something that I set out to do. So I view it as more an administrative process. There is some risk. It's not a certainty.
And do you factor that in though when you're going to make your offer? And that gives you, maybe if other people do not have the same perspective as you and experience with that angle, do you factor that in to your calculations on what you'll offer for the building then?
I look at acquisitions as what do I need to make a competitive offer? And there are a number of people with a similar business model to mine. They're looking at what can I add, and good brokers that are marketing multifamily properties as value add properties are looking at it from that standpoint as well. They often have plans drawn by an architect.
So what you're saying is there's no
what
secret
it could look
here.
like.
There's no secret here, you guys, just like in any other investing that everybody else is doing on the residential, and it's not a secret and it's commonplace for the players that know what they're doing. And maybe, that's not necessarily what's putting you ahead. It's more like your credibility and your known ability to perform, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the opportunity or the future gain is baked into the sales price. So the cap rates that value add properties trade at are horrifying, right? Who buys a property at a 2 cap or a 3 cap? Right. But it doesn't even hit my radar screen what going in cap rate is, because all I care about is what does building operations look like after I'm done renovating it?
Meaning, so does all you care about, since you don't really want to sell, is all you care about if you're going to be able to put your we'll say, what's the word I'm looking for? Your loan on when you're stabilized down the road and get X amount of your cash out, right? That it works on your financing plans. And maybe that's a good time to start diving into your perspective on debt.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the strategy for the buildings is driven by lenders. So to get a building stabilized, that terminology comes from the lending community. So what do I need to do to get this building to a point where a conventional lender will put a loan on it? And loan to me means maximum dollar amount at the lowest rate. So right now that's in the, 65 to just under 70% loan to value range, and in the mid to upper 3%. So 360, 370 for these loans. And I like to put fairly short duration debt on the properties. Short prepay structure, maybe 3-2-1, so that in a few years I have the opportunity to refinance the property again. Maybe it's appreciated a bit over that time, or I've found some other things.
Doesn't that only work in an appreciating market? Couldn't you get a little spanking on if rents are coming down?
Could, but with, even say it's 70% loan to value debt, there's a ton of equity cushion in that loan by the property. And the most a lender is going to give you is a 120 debt coverage ratio. So your NOI exceeds the debt payments by 20%. That gives you a fair amount of cash flow cushion if rents come down as well.
Curious, in the history of your family being in this business, right? What is the percentage drop that you feel? And I don't know if it's related to, I don't know how impacted you are by new construction, or what's the biggest percentage drop or longest duration of flat or declining rents that you recall in the history of your life?
Well, it's definitely 2008 to 2010. And I would say rents in Seattle declined by 10 to 12% during that time.
So still well below the 20%, which is required for debt service coverage, right? So, I mean, you have cushion if rents dropped, right?
Yes.
But I guess isn't also a factor of that then what, because there's rents affect your NOI, but what about cap rate fluctuations for appraisals when you go to get the loans? Does that make any sense what I'm asking you? Is there something to think about like that fluctuation when there's a downturn, do cap rates also impact if you were to go to get a loan, or is it?
That plays a factor. I lump that in the bucket of appraisal risk. So what is the appraiser going to think of your property? You're both looking at the same set of numbers. You supply the appraiser with the building operations, and the appraiser assigns a cap rate to those. And the difference is if the two of you use a different cap rate assumption. So part of it's staying in tune with the market. Where are things trading at? Supplying the appraiser with comps of renovated properties, right? If you use an unrenovated comp, it's not going to be the same. And the other factor is what's banks' appetite for risk. So if banks are feeling risk adverse, they're going to go with a higher cap rate, or just assign a higher cap rate to the valuation. So there's always risk in that, but just keeping a pulse on what's going on and where people are leaning.
When you are assessing your financing, right, and your perspective on debt on all this, and you are, we just said that your preferred way is to go with a shorter term. What does that term look like when you say that? How many is that, like 5?
I go 5-year arms are my go-to debt structure. So 30-year amortization, 5-year fixed period, and ideally a 3-2-1 prepay with no yield maintenance. Yield maintenance is the hardest thing to get around, because sure, you get a few basis points reduction in the rate going in, but it's really hard to get out of a yield.
Is that a choice that you get to make when you're going to finance? Or you just choose a lender?
I mean, you can choose a lender that does not require yield maintenance. So you can choose that, and even within Freddie, you can choose to pay a step down premium to get out of yield maintenance.
Right. Okay. So when you're looking at putting these 5-year arms on there, when you're planning this, right, when you're getting ready to plan this, you are obviously forecasting what you think the market's going to look like in 5 years, right?
From a rent standpoint, yes. You have to make some interest rate assumptions, which are fraught with peril, but yes, you have to build that into the model.
Right. And so what does 5 years ahead look like as of today? for you? What do you think? And first of all, let me ask you, do you ever feel that your properties, because you are, let's say, in older buildings that you're doing value adds in, do you have any impact from absorption issues during new construction booms? Or is it just a different product that it's kind of in a different competitive class?
Yeah, I don't worry too much about the impact of new construction, because even though the interior is being renovated to essentially a new construction level, the exteriors of the building, the amenities, the size of the building, right? At a 1960s building with exterior walkways is never going to have a club room with flat screen TVs and I don't know,
right,
view of downtown, or an elevator.
Curious, what do you think? And I don't know if this is even, I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it. What do you feel that Class A building with, all those amenities and workout rooms and whatever else, what does that equate to in rent? Is that like a $200 difference or what? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it depends on location, but
Let's say Ballard. Just pick at location.
So say Ballard, I would say that new construction is going to be in the 350, 370 square foot rent range. So obviously some fluctuation in there. Smaller units are going to rent more, 2 bedrooms less. And a older building that's renovated is going to be in the low $3 a square foot, $310 to $325.
Got it. Thanks, because I'm getting ready to renew one of my units. We own something at Noma over there. Little selfish question there, but I always think about that kind of stuff. Ballard, right? We're talking Ballard, but yeah, because I was looking at your rents per square foot prior to the podcast today, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's just crazy that how high rents have. I remember back in the day, when we thought $2 was awesome, right?
Yes, it is. It is just exploded, especially this cycle coming out of the last downturn. The rent growth in Seattle has really been tremendous. And part of that is there's been a lot of new construction, and that's kind of raised the bar for everyone and raised expectations in Seattle of what rent is. But the rent growth has been really strong. Right.
So I don't know if you're able to answer a question like this easily, but when you're going to renovate the units just for underwriting purposes, and you're going to do let's just say you're doing a full remodel of the units, full meal deal, kitchens and floorings, plumbing and electrical and, paint and everything, right? What is that? And I know that there's other factors involved, like roofs and common areas and, the addition of the density and stuff like that. So I don't know if you're able to answer the question, but what do you on average spend per unit if you're able to break out just the unit improvements? Does that look like?
Yeah, just
20,000 or?
Just the interior cost for an existing unit. I budget 90 to 100,000, and for an addition, so a new unit going in, more in the 125 to 150 range.
A new unit is 125 to 150, but an existing unit renovation is 90 grand. Is that what you just said?
For that's what I spend for the style of renovation, and remember that's going down to the studs. That's new wiring, new plumbing, new venting. It usually involves relocating the kitchen to add a bedroom in there, and then putting it all back together again with fairly high-end appliances, and flooring, lighting.
With your goal trying to get to whatever the current rents are, to get to about $310 to $325 a square foot.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That's very, very helpful. In case anybody's looking to send Preston some deals. If you don't understand what we're talking about, feel free to call me, or better yet, maybe even meet with Preston. But if you guys have questions, I'm happy to walk you through what we're talking about a little bit on the deep dive right here.
Yeah, and I have to say that evolved over a lot of deals. I mean, I started out with a much smaller budget, right? There's a lot less risk in.
Well, do you always go that deep, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, not always. Not all buildings can justify that level of spend. There's not the rent upside to justify it.
Exactly.
If
that's exactly it, right? So where you can get to on a certain building in a certain location, certain unit style or whatever, that you can probably get to, whatever the number is, $3 a square foot, we'll just say, right? And then you can reverse engineer from there what you think you'll have to pay for the building and what else needs to be done, and how competitive is what you think you'll have to pay, and you can downsize or upsize your renovation plan as long as it gets to an achievable rent that you need to hit for your NOI, right? Sort of it's just that's the fun part, right? Is figuring all that out. Those are all the moving parts. If you guys are following what we're talking about in regards to how you underwrite value add multifamily deals, which is a super, super duper skill set. Which is a completely different pond than what many of you do, house flipping and that sort of thing. They're two different worlds, and the math is different. How you value them is different. So you really need to get educated on this topic, and if you want to get involved in that game, which is a lot of people have that interest these days. So hopefully this podcast will help them out in regards to that. Let me see what else I can ask you here. So when you are, we'll just do a little management side of things. What are the property management fees are you charge for your clients? Or maybe there's a scale based on, obviously, if you're going to do a renovation project for them, it looks different. But what if it's a stabilized building somebody brings you to manage? What are your property management fees that you would charge for that?
The property management fee structure, it depends on the number of units in aggregate that your portfolio is, and it ranges from 2.95%, kind of on the higher end, more than 50 units, down to 5%, 4.95% for smaller buildings. And that's
the management fees are calculated off the gross rents, or
correct.
Gross, not net.
Gross potential rent.
Gross potential rent times the property management fee is the monthly property management fee.
Yeah.
Right. Just so you guys there's a difference between gross rents and net rents, right? So we're talking gross. How many units are in the building times the full market rent for all the buildings equals the gross rents times whatever the property management fee is the cost, right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So, and then what kind of programs and apps do you use? Let's go tech. Let's go tech for a minute.
So what
are you using?
We use AppFolio as our property management software, and it's worked well both from our end and from the tenant side. So there's a tenant portal that tenants use to pay their rent online. They manage all communications and work orders go through this tenant portal. So it's good at kind of giving them feedback on, hey, we received your maintenance work order. We'll be out tomorrow between 10 and 2 to get it resolved. And then there's a ledger, a statement to post all the charges and bank accounts set up to it, so payments go through quickly. on our side of the property management.
Do a little side note here, Preston. Joe and I, sometimes we have like our company meetings right here on the air. And so side note to Joe, actually, we should try and get somebody from Appfolio on the podcast. So a little side note to Joe while we're in the middle of thinking about this. We interview we've interviewed like some of the big guys at Cozy and some of these places that some of the residential management people use and stuff like that. But Appfolio is something definitely that we know a lot of multifamily investors are using. So it'd be great to get them on the podcast as well.
Yes. I'm happy to give you refer contacts to
that'd be great.
Talk to over there. We can talk off the air.
Very
but yeah, they've been good at expanding their offerings to kind of meet demand, especially technology demand. They're going deeper into artificial intelligence and how can we kind of solve some of the routine questions that come up from residents without having a human to respond to them. So if we already know your lease terms and we know the answers to some set of questions that tenants could ask, we can have artificial intelligence respond directly in real time to tenants as they're coming in. So they've been good at adding things like that. They've helped us out on the investor management side. So similar to residents having a portal that they go in, we have an investment portal where investors in projects, they have a landing page where they can come and see all of their investments in all the syndications and get their K1s, get their monthly statements there. So it's been a good communication management tool for the investors as well.
Awesome. Hey, what's your leasing criteria these days? Is it like 3 times rent, or what's the bare bones on that sort of stuff these days?
Yeah, on the leasing side, we'd go with 3 times rents, and we'll take a cosigner in lieu of no income, so student situation, and we usually have roommate situations. So if you take a 2-bedroom and turn it into a 3-bedroom, we found the target audience for that in a market like Ballard or Queen Anne, Fremont, is going to be 3 professionals or 3 single people each occupying a room. So combined, 3 people's salary has been able to cover the rent pretty well. And it also helps the longevity of that unit, because what frequently happens is rather than all 3 residents moving out at the same time, one person will want to go, 2 want to stay, and between the 2 of them, they'll find a new 3rd roommate. And
how does that work for paperwork? Who's on the lease? Is it one lease or?
It's one lease. Yeah, we have a roommate addendum that has one roommate exiting and a new roommate coming in, and the lease is amended so that all 3 of the new people are.
So there's no chance that the 2 that stay, if the one guy that left didn't pay his rent on the way out the door, they're not responsible for that? That's individual to the person that left, or how does that work for the other 2?
Yeah, all of the rent has to get settled up before that tenant moves out. And yeah, I mean the rent is due from the 3 tenants on the lease collectively. So
they're on the hook.
If one person moved out and didn't pay their rent, it would then fall to the responsibility of the other 2 people to either.
Let me throw something crazy at you then. Sure. The phrase out here in our residential side of our investor business is co-living, right? Now, couldn't you potentially collect a higher gross renting by the room versus one lease?
Yes, you could. The downsides are it's more management intensive, and that's really the only downside. Financing might be another downside depending on the duration of your lease. So
where you might only get credit for like like a full market rent, not a premium.
Well, I was going after duration of leases. Banks like to see a predominance of year-long leases. So shorter term leases might be problematic.
Why would they need to be shorter term leases? Why couldn't each person sign a year lease?
They could. If each tenant in each bedroom signed a year lease, that would resolve that problem or that potential problem. It's definitely more lucrative, and
it's kind of one of those things like you're going to add pain to your life because of management. And if you're already doing well, do you really need to do that? You can if you want to, probably, but kind of, is the pain in the ass worth the premium of the return? Right. And that's up to everybody individually, right? To decide
yes.
that. You get these 20-year-old guys buying these buildings, they'll do crazy stuff. They'll do anything. It's like fun for them to see, how they can max everything out to the nines, right? You and me, we've been around a while. We might not want that big of a pain in the butt and choose to do things a different way, I guess, right? But that's interesting, right? It's an interesting analysis on that. Are there any rules though on that in regards to the city of Seattle on what are the current rules? Do you know on co-living situations as such? I mean, it's just a 3-bedroom apartment, so I guess it's fine, right? I mean, or you're not breaking any rules on occupancy with having somebody in a bedroom, right?
None that I'm aware of. I mean, there's not a lot of distinction having 3 people on a lease versus the same people on 3 different leases.
Right. Well, let's segue into the fact of the city of Seattle is a pain in the ass, and how do you deal with that? What do you feel is the most oppressive of those rules? What are you required to do as a multifamily owner in Seattle? And do you think that rent control is going to happen? We're getting long in the tooth here, guys, but this is a good one today. We have a local expert, so we're going for it. We're going to wrap up pretty soon. No worries.
Since you left with rent control, I'll pick that one up. I mean, the most owners or the hardest ones to deal with from a city side are the rent control by 1,000 paper cuts. And will we have rent control? I think eventually, yes, we will. It won't be called rent control. You just won't have control over how much you can charge. I don't know. Historically, this conversation has come up, but it's died off as the economy went into downturn and rents started declining.
I believe I heard that it was basically 1 vote away from passing last time. But I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what I heard. How do you think that if something like that were to go into effect, would it affect your portfolio and those of the owners that you manage?
I don't worry about it too much in the near term. My buildings are all fairly well renovated.
What about thinking about it with your financing of your 5-year plan? Does that add a little more risk to the 5-year financing?
I haven't spent too much time thinking about it because there's too many variables there that I can't control, and so I'm not going to waste energy thinking on that. In a near term, I think it'll create some opportunities in the market as a lot of investors will exit the market the more onerous it becomes, especially smaller investors that have 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. There's a lot of overhead that just in staying up to speed with what the regulations are and how to stay in compliance with that. At some point, you're exhausted and you just want out. So
how about the rules on first in line or whatever the rental stuff is?
Yeah. So first come, first serve is one of these paper cuts that just restricts landlord selection. And I understand why it's done. But cumulatively, the cumulative impact of all these will be to just limit the options and ultimately could reduce in less housing being constructed. Another one is MHA fees. So on the last apartment added to a building, just the MHA fee portion was $18,000.
So for you to add an extra unit was $18,000?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, we didn't cover that. That's
permit cost. That just in order to keep your application moving along.
That's just for the addition of one unit?
Correct.
Ugh.
So yeah, there's some structural cost that's added into the system. This latest proposal to ban evictions during winter months. So if tenants don't pay their rent during the winter, we'll deal with it in the spring. Is another example of it's hard to run a business.
I mean, we don't even have severe winters here. This isn't like Michigan or something, where it's crazy, right? I mean, yeah, it is like you said. I like how you put it into perspective with, death by 1,000 paper cuts seems to be an appropriate way to characterize it, right? Well, we are long in the tooth today on this podcast. We've been going for an hour and a half basically here. So I think, guys, we're going to need to, if you can hear my phone is starting to ring off the hook here. This has been awesome today.
Yes, likewise, Preston. Julie. Great talking to you.
And, we want to give an opportunity to our listeners to further engage with you or, let us know how we can introduce them. I don't know what the rules are, on syndication, because I'm not a syndicator in regards to you have to actually have a relationship with somebody, this and that, or whatever those rules are. But if there's a way that is available for us to connect our listeners to you who have interest in either sending you deals or maybe becoming investors in some of your projects, myself included, I'm always looking for that sort of thing for myself. What would be the best way to go about that for everybody?
You bet. Our website is wallspropertygroup.com. And yes, always looking for leads on new deals, potential investors. We've got distribution lists to keep potential investors up to speed on offerings we have coming out there.
How do we get notified of opportunities that you might have? How would we do that?
Sign up on the website to be on our mailing list for our deals coming out. We'll keep you posted.
And how do you fill those spots on raising that capital? Is it first one to say yes and sign your agreement and send in their money? Or, I know you have, I'm sure, some loyal investors. Do they get first crack, or how does that work?
We do it on a first come, first serve basis. So email goes out to everyone, and we keep it open until our subscription is fully filled. Awesome.
Well, Preston, there's so much to talk about with you. And we're going to need to get your contact, how everybody's, like we said, go to his website, sign up, engage. we might have to have you on again.
I would love to.
We can talk about. We didn't even jump into the, Airbnb or the that sort of stuff that we talked about before. We, corporate housing and all the things that are going on in the multifamily market related to that today. We'll have to save that for round 2 if that sounds good to you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So again, you guys, I encourage you, if you're interested in multifamily investing and you need any clarification on the topics that we discussed today, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out. Or, of course, come to one of our weekly meetups where you can sit down and talk to me in person. That's every single week. You can find me. We have a meetup in Burien, as you guys know. That is at Angelo's, which is an Italian restaurant. So you can either come to engage and plug in and join the conversation, or you can simply come for the beef cannelloni. That's at Angelo's at 601 Southwest 153rd Street every single Tuesday, except for obvious Tuesdays that we'll announce that we won't be there over the holidays and stuff, but in Burien from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And of course, for you East Siders, we meet in Redmond every Thursday at the Family Pancake House off Redmond Way from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I highly recommend the Eggs Benedict in that situation there. We have I think it's the second Tuesday of every month. You'll have to check on meetup.com that we have our Skagit meetup up in Burlington at Bob's Burgers and Brews, and that's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. All these things, if you just go to SeattleInvestorsClub.com and sign up and engage, or jump on our Seattle Investors Club group on Facebook, is a great way to get on our mailing list as well, to be notified of all these awesome opportunities. And starting in January, we'll be finally kicking off our Pierce County meetup, which is going to actually be in Milton. Details to follow on time and location on that, but we've decided and found the location in Milton. That will be happening once a week down there finally. So we're looking forward to that. But other than that, it's probably past New Year's when you guys are listening to this, or close to it. If it's before, happy holidays and best wishes here in 2020 for all of you. And again, Preston, looking forward to get to know you better in 2020 and maybe even jump in on one of your deals. So
likewise, Julie.
Thanks for your time today. And Joe, where can everybody find the details of today's podcast?
Yeah, nice job, guys. Today's podcast, we can find the show notes at SeattleInvestorsClub.com/95. That's SeattleInvestorsClub.com/95. And if you enjoyed this show, we'd love it if you'd give us a review on iTunes or wherever you are listening, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.
Good stuff, everybody. We'll see you next time. Over and out.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@SeattleInvestorsClub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.